Sonic the Hedgehog in 3D. I like it, but unfortunately due to one Sonic 06, this dude's reputation is down the drain. So much so that people say crazy things like all the 3D games are bad, or Sonic was never good, and that's wrong. Recently, the very unique Sonic Frontiers hit store shelves, and this game's been making waves. Sure, it's rolling around at the speed of 7 out of 10, but that 7 for a Sonic fan is like a 9 for any other fandom. If you know, you know. Prior to going 3D, Sega's Blue Blur had a reputation that consisted mostly of bangers, but even those first few years in the third dimension were pretty awesome. You can't tell 12-year-old me that Sonic Adventure 2 is no good, and you can't tell that to my old crusty 32-year-old brain either. You just gotta be prepared to search for emeralds for way too long and hear a whole lot of. So after Sonic 06 ended up being a massive disappointment for everyone, all eyes turned to Sonic Team to try again. That attempt would end up being a game called Sonic Unleashed, one of the most polarizing entries in the franchise. One floating around with mixed reviews, one totally split down the middle by fans, and also one that has an extremely weird reputation. And that's all thanks to one thing, the Werehog. We're gonna get into it, but first, and something that you may not know is that across the 5 different platforms this came out on are 3 totally different versions of the game. So, you know me, I got all 3. Not just that, I beat them all the way. Having never actually played Sonic Unleashed until recently, I wanted to go in as deep as possible in order to get the full experience, and well, I've got a lot to talk about. Buckle up, it's Sonic time. Now it's 60 frames per second with instant load times on the Series X.
So yo, it's Austin, and today I beat every version of Sonic Unleashed 100%, so you don't have to. Unleashed is actually one of the only 3D mainline Sonic games that I never had a chance to play myself, and since Frontiers ended up being okay, actually pretty good, I decided I would go all in on this. This thing just had its 14th birthday like a week and a half ago, and I think that's been long enough to get the full story. We're gonna start at the beginning before it came out, and with 3 different versions, you know we're gonna go hard. I do need to get a little something off my chest. Across all 3 versions of this, there's no Big the Cat, which also means there's no Froggy, there's no John St. John, and worst of all, there's no fishing minigame. I don't know about y'all, probably just a guilty pleasure, but those were always some of my favorite levels. And thankfully, you can do a little bit of that with today's sponsor, Fishing Clash. It's a good segue. It should be no surprise to longtime viewers of the channel that I'm a fan of fishing games, especially ones that let me get pretty wacky with it. Heck, I actually used to go ice fishing all the time as a wee baby, and nowadays I practically live in a desert, so something like Fishing Clash is the way to go. In this, you get to travel all the way around the world, hopping between nice atmospheric spots and catching all types of fish, with some pretty great looking visuals too. Look at this little guy. I'ma catch him. Fishing Clash is all about upgrading your lures, skills, and using power-ups to reel in some of the biggest sea dwellers you can think of. And by big, I mean you're gonna be reeling in sharks, maybe even bigger. You can join clans with your friends and become a worldwide fishing factory, and what else could you ask for? And if you said PvP, you got it. There's weekly competitions to prove that you're the best, and with tons of players on this thing, you'll have plenty to roll with. It's real simple to download and get going, and honestly, a really fun and relaxing game to play on mobile. So click the link down in the description and download it today.
You can use my gift code FishWithAustin and get yourself a head start with an exclusive avatar,
1 mythical lure, which is a dolphin fish, and 30 weight power-ups to help you reel in the big ones. That's promo code FishWithAustin, all one word. Check out Fishing Clash today. Do it. Thanks to the sponsor, but for now, video games. Well, game. Kinda. With 3 completely different versions of this, we're gonna have to start somewhere. There's endless possibilities. But our story begins in a very modern way, with a leak. Leaks are kind of the bane of every developer's existence, but in March 2008, Sega suddenly filed for a new trademark, one for a little title called Sonic Unleashed. For all we knew back then, this could be another Chrono Break situation, but not even a few days later, there'd be a leak on Sega's FTP server that showcased a few screenshots and a trailer. This thing would make the rounds on various message boards of the Chan and Reddit variety. After the big unfinished mess of 06 and the slightly underwhelming Sonic and the Secret Rings, it was hype time. Unleashed was officially announced April 3rd alongside a brand new proprietary engine, the Hedgehog engine, one that they've continued to improve and update over time, with the newest release, Frontiers, still using a variation of it. And you know what? That trailer looked great. It was Sonic going fast. It was a combination of 2D and 3D gameplay, which is something they hadn't tried yet. The leak was sick, and the internet got excited, and that included me. However, this was also the time that the Sonic cycle would become more and more of a thing, so, you know. From here, Sega would piecemeal out bits of new screenshots, game details, and trailers until E3 2008, where we'd all be hit with the big bombshell.
the Werehog. 3D Sonic games did a thing specific to them where they'd always toss different gameplay styles all together like a weird melting pot. They didn't always turn out well, Silver, but then you'd get your Big the Cats fishing minigames and all was well with the world. The Werehog was definitely met with a mixed response. A lot of fans were clamoring for something a bit more traditional, while others were totally fine with the mix-up. I personally have always been fond of different styles, and well, for those wanting a full Sonic game, I guess you got it regardless. Unleashed came out in like prime vampire werewolf twilight hours, and what they showed in that E3 trailer was way more God of War than Sonic. I was still down, even if Sonic turning into a were version of himself definitely felt like a decision made by a boardroom and a dartboard of trends. But hey, at least we got the dude from Bowling for Soup doing a song. I actually kind of like it.
I see it, and now it's all within my reach.
Here's the thing, those trailers, they said PlayStation 2, 3, Xbox 360, and Wii. Sonic 06 didn't hit the PlayStation 2, and likewise, Secret Rings didn't hit HD consoles. In 2008, this late into the 7th generation, they weren't going to be able to make a direct port of this thing, so things were going to have to be different, right? Trust me, we'll get there. However, close to release, it was revealed that Unleashed was going to be retitled to Sonic World Adventure in Japan. For us Sonic nerds, the single word adventure adds a few extra layers of expectations. In fact, it originally was going to be a sequel, but they ended up doing their own thing. I could see how this could have been a shadow game. So here's what we're looking at. We've got the previous gen version on the Wii and PlayStation 2, the next gen HD version on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, then a rarely mentioned Java port. Most of them out on November 18th, 2008, with the PlayStation 3 port a month later and the mobile one the next year. All of them mixed reviews. IGN tends to be inconsistent in general, but the HD version of this got itself a nice fat 4.5, a score actually lower than Sonic 06. It's absolutely bizarre.
Obviously, the Sonic fandom was upset, and the Sonic Antis were celebrating its less than average review score according to the American grading system. But what exactly is Sonic Unleashed? The 3 different SKUs of this have a lot in common. The story, the music, it's just where the gameplay is that it differs radically. But first, the setup. In 2008, the bar was very, very low. I mean, the last big game had a scene with Sonic macking on a human woman, and you can't really go lower than that. Unleashed actually shoots for the ceiling immediately by showcasing this extremely over-the-top and beautiful cutscene right out of the gate. This was animated by Martha Animation Planet, who'd go on to make Resident Evil Vendetta, Final Fantasy XV Kingsglaive, some of the Splatoon cinematics, and just about every Sega thing. It looks great, no complaints here. That also means they made this masterpiece. This has Sonic doing what you'd normally see as the final part of any other game, except this is the rare story of our hero totally failing. Sonic, doing cool jumps and flips and smashing badniks, reaches Eggman, gets captured, and, well, loses. Dr. Evo Robotnik harnesses the energy of the Chaos Emeralds out of Sonic to hit the planet with a giant beam of dark Gaia energy, rendering the emeralds useless and turning everyone's favorite Hedgehog into this. Eggman Land is real, and our normally lovable villain turned into an actual genocidal maniac who, as far as he knows, totally won. No oopsie about it, dude just pissed on the whole planet. From here, Sonic falls Shadow style into the atmosphere, but instead of burning up while thinking about some human chick, he survives the fall headfirst into the dirt. Then we meet everyone's favorite, the brand new mascot character, Chip. I've heard from a lot of people that Chip is the most intolerable part about this game story, and yeah, I totally get it. For some reason, the voice actor just sounds like a dude in his 30s trying to sound like a tiny animal, and yeah, it is exactly that. It's not great.
Well, I'm glad you're back. Want some chocolate? If he got kidnapped that long ago, he's gotta be real hungry by now. And if I was that hungry, I don't know.
This guy stinks!
Or you could just swap it over to Japanese and it suddenly becomes 100 times more tolerable. As with your typical werewolf, Sonic is bound to the position of the sun and moon. Except if it's night on any day, he's gonna be making those weird Persona TikToks. The goal of the story here is to put the world back together from its destroyed state, figure out the whole mystery of the Dark Gaia thing, actually defeat Eggman, and try to stop being a werehog. I mean, it's basically a revenge story, but a real simple concept that's held together by its incredibly sharp presentation, and no matter which version you're playing, it's all there. The weird part is that a majority of the narrative has you running battling between an old guy named Professor Pickle and various continents in order to find out where to go. The version you're playing definitely influences how obfuscated this process is. We'll get into that in a bit, but all of these characters send you back and forth to different parts of the planet as you find temples to restore the power of the emeralds and put everything back together piece by piece. Along the way, you'll meet famous characters like Tails, Amy, and that's it. There's a distinct lack of the peanut gallery in this one, and apparently this was a deliberate choice to focus on a core amount of characters. No Rouge the Boot Bat in this one, but if you flick it over to Japanese, you'll get an alarmingly different Werehog experience.
けど街中でこいつは少し目立つかな
Stupid sexy Werehog. Obviously, you're gonna save the planet, it's a Sonic game. It's not like they're gonna just randomly kill him in the middle and make you play someone else. Oh, yeah. Well, at least the second half of that's true.
So alrighty, there's 3 different games that we're going to be looking at. And I think we need to make our way up to the HD port, so let's start with the previous gen version. I played this on the Wii so I could use the GameCube controller and have slightly nicer graphics. A lot of people on the net like to refer to this one as Sonic Unwiished. I think it's cute, I like it.
I don't know many people who have played both versions of Sonic Unleashed. However, it does seem like a lot of them only know the Werehog from this version. Developed jointly by Sonic Team and Dimps, Sonic Unleashed for the Wii S2 was not developed on the Hedgehog engine, and actually feels like it falls somewhere between Heroes, Secret Rings, and Unleashed. Let's get this straight, Unleashed across all versions is a game split into 2 totally different gameplay styles. You've got the traditional Sonic run and go fast parts, and then you've got the Werehog. Big Hairy Sonic is the bit of controversy here, as generally people's feelings on it are radically different across the board. If we were to distill this down to the most layman terms possible, Werehog is basically a God of War clone. That game and its sequels were pretty popular around this time and kind of reinvented the 3D hack and slash to give us the ability to go hog wild, differently from the more combo-centric Devil May Cry. So imagine you go to the store to pick up a Sonic game and suddenly you're playing Kratos' rip and tear funtime adventures. It might be a little off-putting. That is, unless you have this knowledge going in 14 years after the game's been released. But it doesn't just end there. The Werehog controls completely different in all 3 versions of the game. I know, it's a lot. In this version, you explore the planet by menus, visual novel style. While a lot of Sonic games have you going level to level or picking from a list of stages like Adventure 2, this Unleashed has everything in a series of text boxes that are easy to navigate, and with directions casually scrolling on the bottom so you won't get lost. It's actually almost pointless because, as we'll find out, the next gen version has full city exploration. Exploration with quotes around it. Unfortunately, this also means that a lot of the cutscenes and dialogue have been removed or tossed into a pre-rendered scene. Smaller interactions are now just PNGs of characters, which is disappointing, but at least we get this frame of Tails looking like he's about to have a big poo. Speaking of which, the characters in this game, most of them are humans, and all of them look kind of weird, like they have this DreamWorks thing going on. A lot of people seem to be kind of bothered by this, but I think it's fine. Maybe I'm just a freak. So beyond this, there's the stages, and finding stages to play is basically hitting buttons on the menu, finding dudes to talk to who are then like, oh yeah, go here, entering a location, and then running into the stage. Inside each town are little temples that have sun and moon stone requirements to access doors, kind of like Mario 64. You get these by hitting certain requirements in stages, like having enough rings, having a fast enough clear time, and getting that dark energy. There's extra stages that you can play to get more, and thankfully it's not too terribly difficult to get everything. Although there's not many Sonic games that do this.
You can press the A button to jump.
How anticlimactic. If you were playing something like Sonic Generations, you'd probably expect a level format of like Sonic, Werehog, but Unleashed feels like it has no rhyme or reason. It does follow the narrative of needing to get certain things from certain areas, but sometimes you'll do like 5 Werehog stages back to back. Thankfully, I don't think it's that bad. Going full Dark Souls, you'll use the triggers to attack, likely imitating a Wiimote swing, and you smack dudes around no problem. You'll gain more abilities as you level up with predetermined things unlocking at certain experience tiers. It's very streamlined and easy to play, at least for the first half. Then I get my butt kicked because I keep forgetting how to block. The levels themselves are a mix of platforming and combat with little segments for faster movement. Where Sonic's got a bit of drift going on, and with running attacks being thrown into the mix, combat is genuinely fun. I can see why this port port has higher reviews. And that's not even going into the speed levels. Sonic Unleashed, in my opinion, really solidified the 3D formula. Rather than relying solely on dashing forward, Unleashed combines old school 2D Sonic gameplay into it, and it has you switching between the two on the fly. And it feels good. You just gotta get through those first tutorials. The main hook of Unleashed with normal Sonic was the whole boost mechanic, something that's actually become a staple. You collect rings to raise the meter, then you press a button that makes the fast guy go even faster. It's a very simple mechanic, but also one that's extremely fun. It lends itself well to speed running, and once you're combining that with drifting and air stomping, these sections hit heights that no other games can really replicate. Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, but that sense of speed combined with memorizing level layouts leads to the bulk of what makes modern Sonic fun. Going fast, as long as it doesn't glitch out. The only negatives I can think of is that sometimes it can be a little difficult to see when turns are coming up, meaning you might dash straight off a cliff or run smack dab into a wall, which is at the very least pretty funny. It does lack a sense of replayability though, as there's nothing like emblems to collect. The most we get are little collectible capsules that have little pieces of art, music, and secret documents, which are glorified hints. The main thing here is making sure you hit the requirements to get all the sun and moon stones, and those are typically pretty easy. While it is nice not to have to dig around in each level to find things, it does greatly reduce the playtime when you can knock it all out on your first go. Other than this, there's not too much. It's a very simple version of Sonic Unleashed, and one that for the most part is its own thing. It's relatively easy to finish 100%, and while you don't get much, you at least get something. We'll talk about that later, because we got 2 whole other ports to go.
And we might as well knock this out of the way. Sonic Unleashed came out in an era where a lot of games were getting themselves mobile ports on like BlackBerry and Nokia phones. Really cheap, old school things that you wouldn't really bat an eye at, but do in fact exist. So if you've never even heard of the Java version of Sonic Unleashed from 2009, I don't blame you. A big shout out to emulation, because no way was I buying one of these.
I never thought I'd play an official Sonic game that Sega had nothing to do with, but here we are. Published and developed by Gameloft, Sonic Unleashed for the mobile phone is practically everything you would expect it to be. If you look at the credits, it's made mostly by Gameloft's Chinese branches, by people who have mostly made other mobile ports. However, this did come out when smartphones were in their infancy, so we weren't expecting anything too much greater than like Snake. Upon playing it, I was really surprised to realize that I was actually playing a Sonic game? An extremely bare bones one with some messed up physics that was super janky, but one that had the concept intact. All the levels looked like D-made versions of their console counterparts, the music was shoved into a MIDI filter and rearranged, and even the Sonic sprites look unique. Sonic has a 2-tone shading that actually looks good. I feel like I'm messing around with a ROM-hacked version of Sonic Advance. I don't think anyone was expecting Rooftop Run to throw down so hard on a BlackBerry. However, the Werehog segments definitely do drag this down. You can tell the combat wasn't the dev's strong suit, as it's mostly run up to a dude and smack the one attack button until he dies. I love how health is shown with an actual single number. These segments aren't great, but it definitely blew my expectations out of the water, because if you tell me Sonic's on Java, I just assume the worst. There are a bunch of those too, but Unleashed stands out for trying something different. But hey, I mean, this is like a 40-minute game, maybe costing $5 that you play on the back of a bus when your PSP ran out of batteries, so expectations were low. Do people consider this part of the Sonic Unleashed legacy? No, not really, but we're thorough, it does exist, and I'm just amazed that they actually put the boost gameplay into a small title like this. Yeah, it's lacking like half of the worlds and levels from the other ones. You can just beat it in a single sitting if your crappy cell phone battery could take it, and its jank is all heck, but it sure tried its best. Unless you want to hear Unleashed's killer soundtrack as D-made midis or just crave touching the bizarre, this one's skippable.
Back to 2008, and it's time for the main event, the high-definition Sonic Unleashed, and right out of the gate we got some controversy. It's hard to tell exactly when, looking at old news articles, but at some point Sega announced that they would be pushing back specifically the PlayStation 3 version an entire month from the other two, I guess to try and make it run better, which is not a lot of time. So yeah, this poor game was hit with a big leak, a big delay, even longer in Japan, so how did that all fare out?
The cell processor strikes again. Before we get into this, yeah, the PlayStation 3 version is unequivocally the worst version of Unleashed out there, and that's with an asterisk. The Xbox 360 port has a capped frame rate around 24 to 30 frames a second, while the PlayStation 3 one was uncapped. But at the same time, this thing drops to some of the lowest numbers you'll see on the console and has ridiculous load times. Gotta love the 7th gen. Thankfully, we're playing the Xbox version on the Series X. I've always been a stickler for performance, and until recently, Unleashed was a game that was hindered by that. Well, when this came out as backwards compatible on a 9th gen console and it ran better in some aspects, Microsoft and Sega went ahead and gave this thing an FPS boost and performance enhancements. So yeah, the best way to play this game from 2008 is on hardware that came out in 2020. Beautiful. The HD version of Sonic Unleashed is the flagship release by Sonic Team. It's a game swimming in mixed reception, bogged down by those performance issues and for some, ammo as to why Sonic is bad, or whatever people were saying. It's pretty interesting. Yoshihisa Hashimoto, the director from the outset, had anticipated that this was going to have both positive and negative reception, almost like they knew that the Werehog was going to be controversial, and well, he was right. HD Unleashed opens the same way. Same cutscenes, same story to help Chip get his memory back, except instead of being thrown into a tutorial, it's go time. Oh, that one's on me. You can see similarities in the level design, mostly in the aesthetic, but every level in the HD version here is entirely different. Mechanically, it's very similar to Unwiished, but you can tell they were trying to take advantage of the newer hardware. The scale of the world is massive. Rather than being split into traditional Sonic acts like the last gen port, levels exist as daytime, nighttime, and boss stages. There's also many missions you unlock along the way if you have enough sun and moon stones. They're typically micro challenges with a few extra stones hidden away. The problem with this is that what is a 4 to 6 minute long Werehog stage in the Unwiished version becomes something that on your first try is gonna go 20 minutes. Like, actually. In my first session replaying this, the first Sonic stage took me 59 seconds, with the first Werehog one running me 18.5 minutes. That is quite the difference. They're also structured in a way that makes replaying them a necessity unless you're following a guide. In the previous Gen 1, as long as you're playing well, you can get everything done on your first try. Just get ready to hear that Werehog battle music over and over every 2 minutes in every stage. However, for the HD ports, collectibles are instead hidden in the stage and not tied to your scores. Some levels have a lot, so you spend some time doing backtracking and like knocking down doors to check for items, which then makes your playtime on the level go up even more, making that completion time longer. Same goes for the daytime stages, as you'll be zooming through them so quickly you're bound to miss the stones, art pieces, and other things on your first go. Not that any normal person would do that. This is for the freaks. Typically, you're just gonna be smashing through levels as fast as possible because, well, it's a freaking Sonic game, it'll let you do that. But at a certain point, you might get locked out of levels because unless you collected enough stones, you're not gonna be able to access the next part. So, you know, do the thing. Because of the time difference I was talking about, something like 70% of your time playing Unleashed ends up feeling like a not as good God of War, and that's unfortunately to its detriment. Day stages are very similar to the previous gen port, just larger. But night stages are a wholly different beast. Rather than using the triggers to attack, Werehog Sonic has different combos that you unlock over time. It's usually just a combination of X and Y, but you're best off using 1 or 2 different combos because the majority of the enemies are predictable. You get to jump, grab, platform your way through stages, and it really slows the pace of the whole game down. I'm not sure why, but the last gen Werehog definitely feels faster, and this one combat is more involved, and it seems like they wanted you to focus more on that. Also, instead of automatically getting stronger, you collect little yellow gems that you'll spend in order to level up certain abilities. Your best bet is to toss them all into strength, life, and a little bit into the combo to make things go quicker. If you don't, get ready for health sponges. Oh, and quick time events. So many QTEs.
No one's at the door, Mom. I'm just doing combos.
This is pretty different, but the biggest change between the generations is the exploration. Rather than handling everything through menus, Unleashed HD has you running through little maps in each region of the world to find out where to go. This is definitely a double-edged sword, though. I love running around, it's cozy, and you get a nice feel for the different regions and how the weird DreamWorks looking people are. The music in this whole game is fantastic, but the city tunes are extremely vibeable, especially at night. The problem is that finding out where to go next can can be so confusing. When you back out to the main world map, cities are glowing gold, so they'll tell you where to go, but you have no idea to talk to. You can search for ages and still not quite figure it out, especially if you're an idiot like me. The previous generation makes it so simple. A halfway point between these two would have been nice, but it is what it is. In cities, there's shops to buy souvenirs, which are collectibles, and food to give you experience points. There's also the hot dog vendor. No, we'll get to the hot dog vendor. That evil man. Beyond that, you get a camera where you can try to find the Dark Gaia, aka depression, inside of people and fight their inner demons Persona style. Even with the good and bad attributes, I think that this adds a ton to the Unleashed experience, especially because NPCs will react differently to whatever Sonic you are. Even Amy Rose does the old blindly glomping something vaguely Sonic looking shtick. This girl needs to get a grip. The only other major difference here are the tornado stages, which are practically Simon Says. One with an awesome song, but still, you see button, you press button, button awesome. So button awesome. It's nothing special, but it gives Tails a little bit of extra screen time that doesn't involve him having digestive issues.
I think we've described both of the games pretty well now. They both follow that same structure, have a lot of the same things going on, but what exactly is going on? It's time for the weirdest part, the story. This whole narrative takes place in a world that you've seen from the footage being completely under shambles, but it also is filled with a lot of character. But it's also filled with stereotypes closer to Street Fighter 2 than, 2008.
Welcome to Spagonia, which is definitely not Italy.
助かるぜテイルススパゴニアに急ごう
Chunnan? China? Haloska? Gee, I wonder where that's supposed to be. You travel to all these different destinations, talking to the citizens, and while they're fictional, are definitely inspired by various regions on Earth. Although I was taken aback by Kilika from Final Fantasy X making an appearance. Pre-Sin, of course. All of the locations in Unleashed have a ton of personality, even the one ripping on New York, Empire City. Some are way smaller than others, but all serve a purpose as a little hub that showcases a tiny bit of culture. A little something for Sonic on his world adventure. It doesn't matter which one you're playing, all stages are presented as a spectacle. You can see really far into the background, and they feel massive, like the hub you were just in is around the corner. Something like Windmill Isle doesn't look out of place as you're plodding through a postus in the hub as either Sonic. Weirdly, and a huge difference between the two versions are that a few regions straight up aren't in the Wii S2 port. You get the boss battle from Missouri, but not the levels or Empire City. In fact, this whole area isn't even mentioned, despite being part of the story. Good old Dimps doing some New York erasure. This is definitely just a sign of the budget, as even in the HD version, it doesn't have its own boss fight, just a few levels leading to the Shamar zone. There's a good bit of personality that gets lost in translation when you remove the hubs. One of my favorite parts of Sonic Adventure 1 was running around aimlessly trying to figure out what to do, and sure, maybe that is a part of being 9 years old, but the ability to do that here was appreciated. As you're running around, saving the planet, and restoring the continents, you can really see as NPCs take notice and watch as things slowly become better again. That's lost in the last gen, and even if it's more confusing than it needs to be, it does add a lot to the experience. Jane Schmo over here on the Wii might sit here and think that Werehog is hunky, but you get a sense that Sonic's really curing the world of Cove Dark Gaia's influence. No matter which one we're playing, the rest of the game goes like this. You restore the power of the emeralds at the temples across the land. You defeat Eggman and the Guardians of the Dark Gaia as boss fights, all of which share a similar design. Unleashed HD sure loves spamming the doorbell in every fight. You're doing good, the Earth comes together, and the day is almost saved, but it turns out that Mr. Eggman actually did build Eggman Land, and we've got to stop him. Just brace yourself for the twist. Drumroll, please. Oh, and in-game spoilers. Chip is God. Yeah, this little guy right here gets his memory back, and he's actually Light Gaia, the god to Dark Gaia's Satan. Two forces that strike an equilibrium that hold the planet together, and I am upset. He just about runs out of the plot to go save the day himself before Sonic dulcimes him back into the scene, so yeah, we're just gonna sit here as Werehog standing next to freaking God. It's literally one of those old 90s MS Paint drawings come to life.
Taking a turn for the absolute bonkers, the ending of Sonic Unleashed actually has you team up with the power of God and anime on your side as you take on Eggman, the devil, and his horde of robots at Eggman Land. It's kind of high stakes, just a little. So we've got two choices, the Wii S2 version and the HD port, both of which are similar in aesthetics, and that's about it. They're two entirely different beasts. Let's start with the Wii.
Eggman Land is a long set of stages, and that's on both. And they're also both, unfortunately, unforgiving. The Wii version is separated into a single daytime stage section, followed up with 4 different Werehog acts. If you're playing fast and hard, this is gonna take you over 30, maybe even closer to 40 minutes to plow through. And that assumes you don't game over either, as some of the stages are tough and won't beat you down if you haven't perfected the combo systems. Granted, the Wii one's split into 5 acts, so you don't have to start from the beginning, but it's definitely doable. Flipping over to the widescreen television, however, is an entirely different story. Eggman Land is one level. The whole thing. Day and nighttime gameplays all together as one, and I got 2 major thoughts about this. Making this one level means that on your first go, this is gonna take you 40 minutes straight, and I mean uninterrupted straight. If you run out of lives, you have to start from the beginning. There are extra lives to pick up at multiple points, but sometimes you just miss them and, you know, game over. And B, why wasn't this the entire game? I'm not sure why they tied form switching specifically to the moon when they give you the ability to smack an hourglass and change the time of day during the hubs. Heck, when you're moving around the map, you can literally change the position of the sun. Yeah, it's just video game stuff, but still. I didn't realize this at the time, but it seems to be partially because the consoles couldn't handle it. It was only when I messed around on the PlayStation 3 version that I realized there were long and hard loading times when you switched forms. Like, long enough to put the controller down and stretch for a second. This is what I dealt with on the Xbox. Technology, baby. So let's say you conquer Eggman Land, you fight the Egg Dragoon, and your final battle is the Werehog, which is exactly the same in both versions. Now what? If your answer was Satan rising from the volcanic ashes underneath the planet near the core, you'd be correct. It's like Dante's Inferno. But we've once again come to a fork in the road. For the first time in the video, we're gonna have different boss fights. The kicker here is that one of them is easily one of the worst final bosses in a Sonic game ever, and the other one's totally fine. Dare I say fun. Place your bets now. If you guessed that the fun one was the one with the higher Metacritic score, yeah, that's right.
This game sucks.
In the story, Chip merges with all the temples on the planet to turn into a giant rock robot mech that's essentially a manifested Gaia Colossus. Really? He just looks like a mesh of textures. Sonic loses the power to go hog wild due to the dark Gaia energy getting sucked into this massive monster, which beckons another mystery as to why he had control at all. I just wrote in my notes that it was because Sonic was too woke, but it was at like 3 a.m. Don't mind me. So now you team up. It's time to get all rock mecha on Satan via Punch Out. Dodge to the sides and backwards in some cases and punch this dude to weaken him. It's a short and sweet segment that works with what's about to happen thematically. Chip grapples Dark Gaia in order to give Sonic the opportunity to grind down his crevasses, I guess, and smack him in the eyes. 1, 2, 3, it's done. Just kidding. Perfect Dark Gaia comes up and it's time to go super. Dodge some screen clearing attacks and charge into his eyes again to knock him out. All accompanied by a big orchestral version of Endless Possibilities, and honestly, it's pretty fun. It's not perfect chaos from Adventure 1 or the Final Hazard, and well, truly nothing can beat that in its good old-fashioned butt rock, but it does its job. The planet is saved, Chip goes away, Terminator 2's into the Earth's core, and everything's fine. Perfect. Like a 7.5. Good job. The HD version is a frickin' mess. Everything I just said, not there. You do take control of the Gaia Colossus, but instead of having it be a tight, upfront battle, you're slowly flying towards it while dodging meteors. You have the ability to punch these fireballs, but there's a massive delay on the press to the thing coming out, so timing is weird. Guarding still makes you take damage, and it's just a pain. You have to do this 3 different times with a Sonic segment in between. The first 2 times it's not awful, but the third, I legit nearly game over trying to get the timing down, all accompanied by some slow and awkward looking QTEs, of course. It's a race against time to hit Gaia as Sonic, and it doesn't feel as tight or as fun as the Wii S2 version. Then you go Super Sonic, but this battle's a lot more confusing. You only really got one chance to do this because you can't regain rings during the battle, and you move fast while trying to smack the alien heads coming out of the shield. At least Unwiished gives you the satisfaction of dealing the final blow by smacking the eye head on. Xbox 360 means QuickTime events, which means press X 60 times. I don't know why. Then the final blow. Sonic clipping through his hands. Good job. It has its moments, but the final confrontation on Unleashed HD just feels sloppy. But hey, that's everything. At least most of it. I said 100%, and I mean it.
What if I told you that both of these games don't have anything worthwhile? Which is kind of weird considering the expectations that previous games in the series have set up with, Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Unleashed is kind of a letdown when it comes to getting that platinum trophy, or in the case of the Wii S2 version, a save file that says you did the thing.
Yep, we sure did. Going for 100% on a 360 copy of Unleashed is frankly a massive pain in the butt. For starters, it's listed at a 9 out of 10 difficulty on the trophy tracking website PSN Profiles. That's not just grinding either, some of the things you gotta do are tough as nails. There's 400 Sun and Moon medals in the game, but they're all hidden in the stages alongside the collectibles. Unless you're strictly following a medal location guide or have someone else backseating you the entire time, you're more than likely gonna miss some. That means you're gonna be replaying those 20-minute Werehog levels, and again, to make sure you get the S rank. One touch I did like was how there's multiple versions of the level complete jingle, one where it's all falling apart if you get a failing grade. On top of the two main acts, there's also another one that pops up that has a few medals. These are actually way more difficult than the normal stages and are a fun way to get your Sonic chops all refined. It's also the only time in the game where Chow appear for some reason. Too bad they weren't anywhere else. As a whole, Unleashed doesn't have much actual side content. In Adventure 1 and 2, you had the Chow raising minigame, but Unleashed plays it straight in comparison. Collectibles to open doors, collectibles to look at in the menu, and of course, the hot dog vendor. 3 words that'll scare the weak. It doesn't help that the Xbox Series X blows up the size of legacy achievements and throws an image like this in my face when I'm paused. Good God. Hot Dog Man here has you replay all the missions with different goals, like time trials, having a certain amount of rings. You get the gist. The Wii S2 version of Unleashed has things like this, but it's nowhere near as many and also typically way easier. This is where quite literally 75% of your entire experience is gonna be. Breaking it down comes out to be like 9 times for each day stage, 6 times for each of the night stages, with objectives that range from one and done to, oh, I clipped the wall while turning, gotta restart. Needless to say, it's challenging, just maybe not in the fun way if you're not a diehard Sonic fan. Replaying Werehog stages to this extent is not fun. I think across both console ports that you can play a stage once or twice and it's a decent time, but running that into the ground's a bit much. Grinding this out and grabbing all the collectibles is gonna get you basically everything you need, besides like feeding Chip. Gotta do that.
So let's say you get every achievement or trophy, every stage got the S rank, every collectible is collected, and every mission of the hot dog variety completed. What do you get? Nothing. Not even one thing.
I think Sonic Adventure 2 spoiled us with its 3D Green Hill Zone. Yeah, for some reason, even after you go through the time-consuming and painful process to get all the things, Unleashed gives you a big fat nothing. Besides a trophy, I guess. I'd expect at least a new title screen, or like Amy being like, yo, sick, you're dope as hell, but no, nothing. Meanwhile, let's flip over to the other version. No, not the mobile one, no one cares about that. When you collect a certain amount of Sun and Moon medals, little doors will open up in the Gaia gates that have puzzles. They're small and relatively insignificant in comparison to being a reskin of a stage, but it's a different way to try and nab the extras. You could tell they were trying something different. It's significantly easier to 100% this time around, and there's actually a reward for doing it. Once you get every achievable medal, a final stage opens up. One that has you try to reach the goal without running into any objects, and your reward for this, a cute little extra cinematic of Chip and Sonic fighting over a steamed bun. I mean, it's not a lot, but at least it's something. But we're not done yet. Back to HD, because the 7th generation gave us one final thing to tackle. It's 2008, and you know what that means.
DLC.
Not on disc, thankfully, but I can't believe that these were each like 500 megs to nearly a gig in size. The full game is only 6. Unleashed would get itself several DLC level packs over the next year, each based on pre-existing levels. They're essentially hard mode versions of things that already exist, and little challenges that'll test you even more than the hot dog vendor. All for the glorious reward of being able to say you did it. It's not even medals, just the levels. It's also extremely difficult. Yeah, let's just throw spikes everywhere. Some good content, brother. I was able to finish most of these. It's just kind of there for $12. This is like Sonic for masochists, which is probably most of us, so yeah, give this a shot if you want to get tested. Time limits that persist through death, you know it.
Well, we've reached the end. Sonic Unleashed is finished. What did I think? Well, I actually had a pretty good time with both of the games, even though they're kind of a pain in the butt and not really worth going all of the way with. But this was, in my opinion, Sonic's 3D redemption from 2006, and I think they did that well.
If we're gonna compare these both directly to other deep dives we've done, I think it goes Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, Unleashed Wii, Unleashed Xbox, Balan Wonderworld, and then Babylon's Fall. Mechanically, the next gen version is a bit more solid, but Unleashed respects players' time more. It doesn't make you dig around to find a key forever, and it's just a tighter package overall. Both are solid and fun games, way better than the reputation precedes them, and whoever was going around saying this was garbage back in the day needs their head checked. Unfortunately, it seems like Unleashed went through the ringer for a bit. Its mixed reception did it no favors, as it became another game on the pile of things to laugh about. I mean, Sega themselves initially removed it from all digital and physical sales, as in 2010 they announced they were delisting anything with a below average Metacritic score. Remember when that mattered? Thankfully, it's garnered somewhat of a cult following, with apologists like myself coming out of the woodworks, getting relisted, and even made backwards compatible years later. When Unleashed came out in 2008, I think it was treated too harshly. That was a good year for games. You had things like Dead Space, Metal Gear Solid 4, Grand Theft Auto 4, you know the ones. Unleashed isn't perfect by any means, but I think time, a bit of hindsight, and a fair dose of nostalgia has made it stand up a little taller over the years. Its legacy has improved, and I think that's pretty cool, especially with the Series X really showing how clean this can be without that 7th generation crust. The Werehog has made cameos and appearances here and there in other games, and even comics, but has never reappeared as a main game mechanic. I think it's something that definitely has or had potential, but it's also kind of silly when you can just have Omega or someone similar in the same spot. Vector God of War, anyone? But as it is, Sonic Unleashed exists as a strange thing that came out in a strange time. It's the only mainline Sonic game to have representation on different generations with ports that are totally different, and it's one of the most polarizing in the series. If you were negative on this in the past and happen to have a penchant for something a little weird, I highly recommend picking this up again. Though you're probably playing Frontiers right now and don't own an Xbox Series X, so yeah. I don't know how to end this. So, Werehog battle music?
So there you have it, all 3 versions of Sonic Unleashed beaten 100% so you don't have to. Asterisk, no one cares about the Java version. Whatever. I've wanted to talk about this game ever since I saw the performance upgrades with the Series X, and I think the time was well spent. It's got a really unique story in case of like the development, its reception over time and everything, and this was my first time playing it, so I hope you enjoyed taking that journey with me. I realize that a lot of you probably have played Sonic Unleashed already, so I appreciate you stopping by. Make sure to check out today's sponsor, and if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so via Patreon or buying one of my shirts. All the money goes into the channel and my editors, and we're doing our best to make more stuff. Big ups to my editor Joshy, who helped me lead the Werehog into enemy territory with no problem. Anyways, I'm gonna go. I've been Austin, and catch me next time when, well, actually, a few times from now when I talk about the game that won the poll, Gotham Knights. I'm so ready.
Thanks to today's sponsor, Fishing Clash. Make sure to click the link down in the description and use the code FISHWITHAUSTIN and get started playing today. Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to A. Vox, Aaron Kwolek, Blackfoot Ferret, Chris Shelton, Christopher Oliva, Doug Prince, DX Buster, David Molnar, Elijah, GM Pinks, Hey Quiggles, Jay Roos, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Kevin Zanowski, Karen Arter, Nami Babs, Nick Irving, and Ryan Talbert. Thank you so much for your generous support. Happy holidays, get ready for more shopping and Mariah Carey to grace your ears. I had a lot of fun making this. This very clearly took a lot of time, but I'm really happy with the result and I hope you guys like it as well. I got a couple more videos coming out before the end of the year, so hey, watch them. Also, I don't know the whole social media situation thing because I barely use it. I'm still on Twitter, but we'll see what happens in the future. I'm probably gonna end up reopening my community Discord for a smaller public side. I'll let you guys know, but for now, I'm gonna go play golf. Okay, bye.